welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the conversations. I'm Somna Sambo. And as Nigerians enter the electioneering season for next year's national elections, the political scene is already heating up. There have been growing concerns as to how to ensure that campaigns are issues-based across the board, and the media has a key responsibility of making that possible. Being fair and balanced in its reportage of the elections is also very crucial to the outcome of the election. Experts say the media needs to focus on several issues that will help to lead to political development rather than petty issues. Now, how is the media prepared for this critical role ahead of the elections? Well, to discuss this, I have with me in the studio a media consultant, strategist, and former chairman of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, FCT chapter, AMOS DUNIA, and of course, also here with us is GLORIA Essien, the Financial Secretary of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, FCT chapter. And of course, we'll be joined later virtually by a former Special Advisor on Media and Strategy to the Kogi State Government, Jacob NIMSAI EDI. Thank you so much for being on the show. And I start with you, Amos. Talk to us about the critical role and expectations of the media as we prepare for the campaign season from September 28. What is expected of media coverage of these activities, and how do we ensure that the politicians do not drive the narrative, but we ensure that we set the agenda from a perspective that will be beneficial to citizens?
Thank you very much, my brother. First, the media has a role of informing and educating the members of the public, particularly now that we're in a democratic setting. And having said that, we must also be able to distinguish that from agenda setting. In setting agenda by the media, there are a lot of plethora of issues that have now come to bear. Take, for instance, ownership and control. You have an incident now that where you have more politicians owning the media and directing what should be. So it has now made the job of the media more critical and difficult to achieve. But having said that, it does not in any way vitiate the fact that the media should not play its key role of informing, educating, and setting the agenda. But again, the social media has also come into play a critical role in this matter, because everyone that has access to an Android phone pretends to now practice journalism without understanding the rudiments of information management. There's difference between just handling phone and sending whatever messages or message that comes around. Then you just pop it up without actually filtering to know and how to dissect such information is critical. Setting agenda, you can also see that it's even becoming very difficult for the media, because politicians tend to now have an upper hand in this matter.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to interject. It looks like they are beginning to, take that away from us through social media.
Yes. Apart from the social media, the politicians too have not assisted much. Let's start from even the party politics, political parties, and the candidates. Look at those they are appointing to manage information. They are not information managers, they are not public relation officers. People that have very little knowledge of what information management is. Look at the two main parties, for instance, and even the upcoming one. Is it the PDP, their information officers, or their spokespersons? Yeah, I mean, none of them is Dino Melaye,
and then of course,
Dande Boala, as intelligent as they are. There's a difference between having a professional, a key professional in the media industry, managing the information management of these aspirants, or candidates, I mean to say, than having people, a politician and a lawyer. Whereas you cannot at any time have a media practitioner managing legal department of the political parties or candidates. Why do you bring this? So in a way, they are trying to ensure that the media is not in any way able to direct the affairs the way it ought to be. Because if the media should have its say properly, it will help to galvanize and guide the society through electioneering So we will not have the situation whereby it's the politicians directing their affairs. Because what is going on now is that the politicians we have, particularly in Nigeria, they're not thinking of the people. They're only thinking of their own ideas and how to win elections.
Okay, I'll ask you to hold on there. And of course, he has raised a very critical point, how politicians are beginning to set the agenda for the media. And then it looks like the media is playing catch up, because any of the presidential candidate can just post something on Twitter. Now, before you know it, the media is the one running around and all of that, and it's already there. How do we take ownership of that responsibility back and ensure that, you know, when the politicians, the candidates, for example, want to communicate appropriately to the right set of citizens and all of that, they know how to keep the media in view and then play along with the media?
Well, like you have said already, the politicians are the ones now setting the agenda instead of the media, and it is very wrong, because I think the social media is also helping them. Like, you wake up in the morning, first thing you check their Twitter handles to see what they might have said while you were sleeping. Instead of you waking up to tell them what to do during the day, you check what they have said and you take it up from there. You now be doing rejoinders, doing follow-up. So I think what they should do, like my boss has said, is to make sure that they have professional media men and women in their circles to tell them this is how to go about this. For instance, you work in a radio station, you go and drop something on Twitter. My boss will say, bring a sound bite. Let me get that person's voice saying it. You don't have it. So how do you defend what you're pushing out? At the end of the day, sometimes you push out what they have tweeted and they deny it. Today we are dealing with the issue of Wike denying that he was not the one that sued Atiku. But it was out there. We have carried it. They have already set the agenda. You're still going back to deny what they have said. So it puts us in a very tight corner as media practitioners in Nigeria.
And one critical role I want you to talk about also is how we can actually ensure that there's a lot of trust in our activities, because people are beginning to question the sort of information that's coming from the media, because sometimes we're accused of not properly getting the right information before going out. And then sometimes, just like you had said previously, the social media is driving our content generation process rather than us generating information critically that's beneficial to us. And then issues of fake news. How do we try to tackle fake news in the midst of all of this?
I think what we should do is to have contacts. You build your contact, and the contact, you appeal to them to always be there to respond when you call. Getting across to our politicians is very difficult. You can call them from morning till night. They don't pick. They only call you when they need you. You don't call them when you need them. You call them when you need them, they don't answer. And by doing that, you need to get content as quickly as possible. So anything you lay your hands on, you push it out. At the end of the day, you get into trouble. There's this NBC out there. There's everybody trying to regulate what
Nigerian
we do.
Press Council,
so
all of that.
All of them. So I think we are really, really in a tight corner. I think something has to really be done about it.
Okay, and I'm been told that Jacob Edi is joining us. He's a former special advisor on media to Kogi State Government. And if we have you there right away, can you just talk to us on why it's difficult for some of the presidential candidates to want to sit in for interviews? We've seen we at Arise TV here interviewing Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi and of course Kwankwanso. But when it comes to the issues of Tinubu, we ask for him to be with us, and he chooses at his own discretion not to be. How do we ensure that the public's demand for such a presidential candidate is accepted by him, and the politician quickly agrees to such a media interview? Because a lot of people want to know what he has to offer to the Nigerian public.
Thank you, Sambo. I can see Chairman Dunia. Good evening. Well, you see, if anybody don't want to take the advantage the media presents, it is up to such a person to bear the consequences. The media is out to do its job as it should be done professionally. So if the media offers such opportunity, one expected that Tinubu will jump at it. If he doesn't, then maybe he has something else in stock, or how else he wants to do it that is unknown to Nigerians. I don't know a better way of reaching out to Nigerians and talking about his programs than the opportunity the media has given to him.
Okay, and then the critical role that we have to play as journalists to push out fake news, because sometimes you hear journalists trying to bring out some content from social media, and all of a sudden you see lots of deniers following up and all of that. How do we ensure that the content that we get, even from politicians on the social media, is not one that misdirects the public?
Well, I've said this a long time ago. Until you regulate what we have now as social media, fake news will not stop. I don't see anything practically that will stop fake news from coming out. The politicians are aware of the weaknesses of the system, and they take advantage of it, and you don't blame them. So what should be done is to look at ways of regulating the social media. I mean, a situation where somebody wakes up in the morning because he has access to Facebook or Twitter and can string words together, he tells you he's a media guru. I mean, that is it's funny sometimes, but it has done incalculable harm to the profession. The social media has not, for me, the social media has not helped the.
And I come back to you, Amos. I'd like you to talk about how important it is for the communication teams of the various presidential campaign councils to understand the critical roles that they have to play. Okay, sorry, I've just been told that Jacob is back. And Jacob, just quickly, how do you react to the issues of lawyers being appointed to play the role of media advisors in the several presidential campaign councils? Okay, well, we don't have him now. Let me come to you, Amos. We have seen a lot of journalists beginning to own media platforms, online media platforms and all of that, to try to drive a new narrative away from citizens who are news enthusiasts, because I don't like calling them citizens journalists, because no one will allow a citizen doctor to treat him or her, or a citizen architect to build a house for him or her. So how do we ensure that journalists permeate this space so that we don't have information that is not well verified or that follows the information guidelines coming to the public space?
Yeah, I earlier wanted to contribute to what my brother and colleague, Chief Jacob Edi, said. You see, in trying to control information flow from the social media, is to be able to ensure that we have verifiable handles of the various politicians. Because apart from having their actual handles, there are other people that are creating fake social media platforms where they try to dish out false information.
We saw the Labour Party vice presidential
who has to deny that he does not even have any platform. He does not belong to any platform in the social media, but people created that for him. So we have to try to ensure that we have verifiable platforms of the politicians. Having said that, again, there is the need for even the core journalists to reduce the incidence of trying to rush to breaking the news at all times. You see, when these people post agenda, we tend to want to follow their own agenda rather than we setting the agenda. I think that's where the problem comes from.
Yeah, and sorry to interject here. Yes. We've seen journalists trying to perform their duties based on the opinion of people on social media.
And that's why I say it's wrong.
Forgetting the professional ethics.
Yes, that's where it's wrong.
Or being influenced by it.
Particularly those of us running various online media organizations, we should be able to actually self-control ourselves. In the sense that if you are working for a mainstream media organization, there are various processes. Get the story, move to an editor who will look through it before he passes it. You see, there's a chain. But now in the social media, most times there's no chain of or structure of information processing. You just have people gather information without even verifying. They are too much in a hurry to get it out there. I think the moment we start having that I'm not saying self-censorship, I say self-control. We need that control mechanism whereby we'll be able to actually dissect and synthesize the story before dishing it out to the public. It will reduce these incidences of coming to deny the story or trying to apologize to members of the public for trying to, for actually misleading them.
Okay.
So that way, we'll be able to get things better controlled and understood and appreciated better by the members of the public.
Yeah, and Gloria, I wanted to find out your own perspective on the appointment of lawyers as presidential campaign spokespersons here and there. I mean, where are all the media practitioners in this country?
It is very wrong. They are robbing us of our jobs. Like you earlier said, a citizen lawyer cannot go and represent you in any court. We have professionals in this country. I think we should be consulted. If they don't enjoy our jobs, why do they come to us when they need to push out information? But when it comes to putting us in the mainstream, they remember they have friends who know the media job more than the media men and women themselves, which is very, very wrong. Okay. The NUJ seriously condemns that.
Okay. And I come back to you, Jacob. I would like to hear your views on that. Because when it comes to the job of the media, I remember Ruben Abati, when he was a special advisor of media to former President Goodluck Jonathan, he would always say that when it comes to his own job, several persons in the villa will tell you, oh, I am a journalist, I have done this, I know so journalists. Everybody knows the job of the SA media, but they don't know the jobs of others, and they are interested in having their views. They'll tell the president, don't worry, push aside the SA media, I can do this better. Why is he always like that?
You see, it is the fluidity of the profession that has gone to that height. You can wake up and become a journalist because you know how to write. Nobody cares about whether you have the professional tools to do the job. It's condemnable. It is, yes, condemnable that lawyers are now being made to do media jobs. They don't know how to do it. With the greatest respects to their profession. This second interview of Keyamo was a disaster. A media man will not make that kind of that kind of mistake. And Dino's response to Keyamo was a greater disaster. I can assure you if these two gentlemen are journalists, you cannot have those kind of tapes that we have seen in the few media outings they have had. So I think the party leadership should go back to the drawing.
Okay, unfortunately we've lost it. And then I come to you, Amos. How do we remedy this situation now? How do we put it out there to the presidential campaign councils, the political parties, the presidential candidates, that in trying to drive your point, you need to get professional media practitioners to help you drive the narrative?
One is to make the politicians and even the so-called information managers they've appointed now to understand the difference between information management and propaganda. What they're involved and engaged in is propaganda that drives to nowhere. You see, Keyamo, like my brother Jacob said, came to just propagate without having serious attention to issues. He was not bothered about the sensibilities of Nigerians. He didn't bother. All he felt was he can talk down to anybody and people will have to accept him. But if he was an information manager, a core journalist, the things he said on air, he would have been more conscious about such things. He wouldn't just have gone to divulge such information, telling people, oh, go and beg ASU will not take loan for them and that kind of.
Although some people have also said that journalists are not good information managers.
Which is
That's
wrong.
a different role. Very quickly before we go.
Information management is different. It's a key aspect of mass communication or journalism. You don't have that in law practice. Information management is key. And until people start understanding the rudiments of information management, different from act of propaganda, we won't get anywhere. And until the politicians too start buying in to understand that information management is key in helping to manage the people, helping to dialogue with the people, the better for the system.
Very quickly, want to add to that?
Yeah, information management is a bit of diplomacy, and lawyers do not have that experience, so they should give us our jobs.
Okay, we must thank you so much. GLORIA Essien is the Financial Secretary of the Nigerian Union of Journalists in the Federal Capital Territory here. And of course, our AMOS DUNIA is a former chairman of the Nigerian Union of Journalists in the FCT here. He's a managing editor in one of the online dailies, and of course, a media consultant and strategist. And you brought us something very key here, that there's difference between information dissemination and propaganda.
Absolutely.
And the various presidential campaign councils should know. And of course, Jacob Edi earlier joined us. He's a former special advisor on media to the Kogi State Government. Thank you so much for joining us virtually. And of course, we must thank you for joining us on this edition of the Arise interview. Do stay with us as we continue other programs, and see you next week.